The ending of the American Civil War ushered in a period of expansion. Following the conclusion of the Spanish-American War, the spoils of war included the island country of the Philippines and turned the rebels, fighting against the former Spanish regime, as de facto insurgents against the dreams of American colonialism. What would follow would later be called the Philippine Insurrection and would be one of the most brutal and shameful conflicts in American military history. Racism in that time was the norm and widely accepted. President Teddy Roosevelt supported the colonial conquering mindset of America by espousing the idea to carry a big stick and bludgeon anything that stood in the way of American interests. The soldiers who went across the globe to fight in the Philippines were split in their sentiments towards the Filipinos, many questioning their motive to wage a war with no apparent just cause. These are their stories. Arthur H. Vickers, Sergeant in the 1st Nebraska Regiment. I am not afraid, and am always ready to do my duty, but I would like someone to tell me what we are fighting for. Robert Bruce Payne, of the Nebraska Regiment. We volunteers imagined we were heroes going forth to battle for others' liberties. Yes, fight for freedom of other people, but alas, we feel a little sneaking when we have to return to our fair land with the blood of Filipinos upon our hands. Men whom we would liberate, we now force under the yoke. What if the North had whipped the South to free the Negroes and then took the Negroes and compelled them to work for them? General Reeve, lately Colonel of the 13th Minnesota Regiment, I deprecate this war, this slaughter of our own boys and of the Filipinos, because it seems to me that we are doing something that is contrary to our principles in the past. Sergeant Elliott of Company G, Kansas Regiment. Most of the general officers think it will take years and a large force of soldiers to thoroughly subjugate the natives. And the unpleasant feature of this is that unless the conditions change radically, there will be few soldiers who will care to stay there. There is not one man in the whole army now in the Philippines who would not willingly give up his life for the flag if it was necessary. But it isn't pleasant to think about dying at the hands of a foe little better than a savage and so far away from home. Charles Bremer of Minneapolis, Kansas, describing the fight at Caloocan. Company I had taken a few prisoners and stopped. The colonel ordered them up into line time after time and finally sent Captain Bishop back to start them. There occurred the hardest sight I ever saw. They asked Captain Bishop what to do and he said, "You know the orders." And 4 natives fell dead. Ellis G. Davis, Company A, 20th Kansas. They will never surrender until their whole race is exterminated. Their independence is dearer to them than life, as ours was in years gone by and is today. They should have their independence and would have had it if those who make the laws in America had not been so slow in deciding the Philippine question. Of course, we have to fight now to protect the honor of our country, but there is not a man who enlisted to fight these people, and should the United States annex these islands, none but the most bloodthirsty will claim himself a hero. G. Fetterly, a Nebraska soldier. Some think the insurgents are disheartened, but I think they will make a desperate struggle for what they consider their rights. I do not approve of the course our government is pursuing with these people. If all men are created equal, they have some rights which ought to be respected. Arthur Minkler of the Kansas Regiment says, "We advanced 4 miles, and we fought every inch of the way. It was like hunting rabbits. An insurgent would jump out of a hole or the brush and run. He would not get very far. I suppose you are not interested in the way we do the job. We do not take prisoners." At least the 20th Kansas do not. Leonard F. Adams of Ozark in the Washington Regiment. I don't know how many men, women, and children the Tennessee boys did kill. They would not take any prisoners. One company of the Tennessee boys was sent into headquarters with 30 prisoners and got there with about 100 chickens and no prisoners. Lenin F.A. Blake of California, in charge of the Red Cross. I never saw such execution in my life, and hope never to see such sights as met me on all sides as our little corps passed over the field, dressing wounded. Legs and arms nearly demolished, total decapitation, horrible wounds in chests and abdomens, showing the determination of our soldiers to kill every native in sight. The Filipinos did stand their ground heroically, contesting every inch, but proved themselves unable to stand the deadly fire of our well-trained and eager boys in blue. I counted 79 dead natives in one small field and learned that on the other side of the river, their bodies were stacked up for breastworks. Anthony Machia of the 3rd Artillery, we bombarded a place called Malabon, and then we went in and killed every native we met, men, women, and children. It was a dreadful sight, the killing of the poor creatures. The natives captured some of the Americans and literally hacked them to pieces, so we got orders to spare no one. Robert D. Maxwell, Corporal Company A, 20th Kansas. Sometimes we stopped to make sure a native was dead and not lying down to escape injury. Some of them would fall as though dead, and after we had passed, would climb a tree and shoot every soldier that passed that way. Even the wounded would rise up and shoot after we passed. Despite the savagery waged against the Filipinos, 50 years later, they stood shoulder to shoulder, surrounded against the Japanese. This battle helped win the war in the Pacific, as it bought the Pacific Fleet time to rebuild. This friendship endures to this day.